النبي الأمي جزاكم الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على النبي الأمي برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Respected elders, beloved brothers, last night we were mentioning this Sahabi Hazrat Urwa bin Mas'ud al-Thaqafi. So I want to mention something very interesting about this Sahabi before he became a Sahabi, and how this gives every one of us hope that from where to where a person can be and where Allah can make him reach. So last night we read an ayah referring to this Sahabi, and tonight also in the first Surah, Ahqaaf, we are going to be reading a whole section concerning this incident. This incident started in the Meccan stage of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life. Now remember, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's Mubarak life is divided into Makkah Mukarramah, Medina Munawwara. Now in the Meccan stage, Allah's Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's Mubarak life was so much of inviting to Islam, inviting to Allah. Now you'll see the surahs revealed in Makkah Mukarramah are also predominantly that, working on Iman, working on conviction. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Muslims were incarcerated in a valley called Abu Talib, the valley of Abu Talib. That was the name of the valley. They gave that valley that name. Muslims were locked up there for 3 years. In that there was so much of difficulty in Makkah, from the year 7 Nabawi till 10 Nabawi. Now let's remember this, because this is something that should stay with us for the rest of our life. It's concerning the life of our beloved. Sadly today, many would know everything about certain soccer rights or certain sportsmen. A lot of their own personal lives also somehow, Allah forgive us, we go into. Allah's beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's every aspect of his life should be so close to us and loved by us. So from 7 to 10 they were locked up. When Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came out of that valley, and how they came out of the valley was a very interesting event too. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told his uncle Abu Talib. Now keep something in mind, Abu Talib was a good man, but he hadn't yet embraced Islam. So sometimes you find a non-Muslim, but he's a good man. Many of us have the notion, oh no, if a person's a non-Muslim, he is the worst, he is kafir, There's a lot of good non-Muslims too in life, in the world. We can't blame everybody with one brush. No, only if he's Muslim is nice. What if he's a non-Muslim and no one ever explained to him? And what if the experience he had with Muslims was bad? So they are good also. Look at Abu Talib. Allah's Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told Abu Talib, tell them in Makkah, the document they wrote and hung inside the Kaaba is devoured, is not there anymore. So Abu Talib told them that. They started laughing. What do you mean? That document, we wrote it, it's inside the Kaaba, and the Kaaba is locked. Nobody has access to the Kaaba except the kuffar of Makkah. Keep this in mind. This is the Meccan stage of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's blessed life. When Abu Talib told them, afterwards they go inside to see, and the entire document where they wrote down this, so this is another document written, not Sulh al-Hudaybiyah document. Muhammad Rais, where's Muhammad Rais? Okay, not Sulh al-Hudaybiyah document. This is another document of locking up the Muslims, incarcerating the Muslims, not dealing with the Muslims whatsoever. When they go inside, they find the entire document devoured, eaten, except the words, Bismikallahumma, in your name, O Allah. These were the only words of the document left. And alhamdulillah, that 3-year ordeal where Muslims suffered under an open-top prison, where their children cried daily out of hunger, that ordeal came to an end. But sadly, at the end of that ordeal, Abu Talib was ill. Now an old man sleeping in the wilderness, sleeping in the open, it had a toll on him. He passed away. Who else passed away? The greatest support to the Messenger Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was his blessed wife Khadija. You know what a woman she was? She was prominent, she was well-to-do, but her life started with intention. And this is a lesson for you and me. She says, she speaks of her history. She says, one day when my friends were sitting together, and someone came there and told us about the final Nabi of Allah, my friends laughed. But in my heart I said, Ya Allah, give me the opportunity and I'll serve this man we hear about. That was in her heart. Imagine Allah accepted that intention. That all her life she served and she loved and she supported the greatest of Allah's creation. Do you know what they used to tell her when she went to town in Mecca? They used to laugh at her. Oh, the wife of the maniac is here. The wife of the madman. The wife of the magician. She didn't react. She politely just went by. And when Allah's Nabi came home, she never once made him hear, because of you, how much I have to go through. Never, ever. Our mother Khadija. But when he came home, sometimes he was bleeding. Sometimes there was entrails of a camel smeared on him. Sometimes his kurta was tattered and torn. You know what Khadija used to tell him? That never did she say, how much I have to go through because of you. Never. We learn about the hadith. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came home, he had itar, and he had miswak. His beautiful mouth had emanated such an amazing scent. That was in Medina Munawwara. In Makkah, when he came home, he was bleeding. In Makkah, there was entrails on him. In Makkah, his kurta was tattered and torn. Khadija used to say, radiyallahu anha, oh my Nabi, just carry on. You are Allah's Nabi. And this is the work of Nabi. Uthbut yabna al-am fa inna lin-nubuwati tabi'at. Nubuwat has these challenges. She was his support. That's how great it is when women support their men. Allahu Akbar. Someone was asking last night about how Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to go into seclusion. Yes. And Khadija knew the point where Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went. Uthman was asking. So Khadija radiallahu anha used to bring food and take it for him. Because days have gone by, he doesn't have food. She'll bring it for him. She'll look for him. And if he doesn't come back after a few days, she comes to look for him. Because he was restless now. People are involved in idolatry. People are in shirk. It used to hurt him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He used to go in seclusion and ask Allah for salvation, for faraj, for a way out, for an opening. Now when they came out of that valley, 3 years ordeal, Hazrat Khadija also passed away. Oh, that was a blow. As Hazrat Khadija was passing away, she's telling her daughters, 4 daughters Allah blessed her with, and 2 sons. But they both passed away, the sons. 3 daughters, she's telling them. They ask her, why you cry, ma? She says, I wish I could do more for deen. That was her cry. How much she did, all her wealth, she was a prominent woman, well-to-do. She gave it all. And she's leaving this world, and she's crying, I wish I could do more. And she passed away. This was hard for Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Because now, outside, when they used to insult him, he used to come home, he got that comfort. Now where you have that comfort? Anyway, then Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went to Thaaif, and he went to invite the people of Thaaif to Islam. So we're going to read ayat concerning this tonight, Rasulullah's return journey from Thaaif. So we'll link this discussion with the evening discussion. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam goes to Thaaif. How did they treat him? First he went to meet the leaders. Abd Yalil, Mas'ud, 3 of them. They're called the Thaaif people. Especially us our forefathers come from India. We have to remember the incident of Thaaif properly. Because there's a great event in Thaaif that became the means of the guidance of the people of India. Inshallah, sometime we'll discuss Africa too, because Africa is very special. I see our brothers from Africa, Allah bless you. Do you know, the woman that cared for our Nabi the most, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after his mother, was a woman from Africa. She loved Allah's Nabi. Allah's Nabi used to say, oh, she is my mother after my mother. She came from Africa. I'm not going to tell you now. Tonight I'm going to tell you who that woman is. But before that, if you tell me, I'll be happier. In the day, you tell me, oh, that woman you're talking about is so and so. I say, mashallah, so good. At least the brothers of Louis Trichardt, mashallah, they know about the life of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So I'm not going to tell you. I want you to tell me, inshallah. In this respected elders, beloved brothers, how did they treat Allah's Nabi? Who are you? They're telling him. You, Allah's Nabi. The other said, I'm not interested in talking to you. The third said, I'll tear the clothing of the Kaaba if you are Allah's Nabi. They didn't even offer him hospitality. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And they chased him out. And you know what else? They sent the gangsters of Thaaif to chase him. And you know what they did? They pelted him. They stoned him. And the blessed Nabi of Allah's Mubarak body was bleeding, to such an extent that he was stopping the blood from reaching the ground. Do you know why? He didn't want the blood to reach the ground. That when the blood of a Nabi hits a ground, that's imminent destruction. He didn't want that to happen. Every time he fell, they picked him up to enjoy. They were standing in two lines and he's running and they're enjoying him bleeding. Imagine, not pebbles, imagine someone being hauled at with rocks. His head, his face, his body, his knees, his thighs, all were bleeding. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But look at the height of compassion, fortitude, mercy. Even mercy doesn't even give enough of a meaning. The beloved of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam finally resorts in a garden, because they stopped the chase, and there he made dua. Now this dua, I know you have it inside your house, but only we're not reading this dua. I'm going to tell you where this dua you'll find it. Allah's Nabi is saying, Allah, ilayka ashku. To you alone do I complain. Only you can help me. I complain to you, not to anybody else. I talk to you directly. Ilayka ashku. Why I complain? That I am the weak one. ضعف قوتي وقلة حيلتي. My planning is I complain of the lacking in my way and my planning. My way is weak. I don't know how. وَهَوَانِي عَلَى النَّاسِ. And my reliance on people, that they must help me do this Mubarak work you sent me for. وَهَوَانِي عَلَى النَّاسِ. Oh, the most merciful one, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. But Allah, who do you leave me to? Allah, if you leave me to them and you see me in the state, but you are happy, then I don't mind. But if you are not happy with me, that is my greatest worry. If you are happy with me like this, I am happy, oh my Allah. What's amazing about this, Allah's Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is in a difficult state. He's paining. Not only is he physically paining, he's spiritually hurting. You know how it feels when someone disgraces you. That's why later on in life, after Uhud, the physical torture was more. His Mubarak teeth, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, broke, front teeth, and his Mubarak head was fractured. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's Mubarak head was fractured, and his knees were injured. He fell into a pit, physical, lot of hurt in Uhud. But after Uhud, he was asked, what was the day that was the most difficult? He says, the pain I felt in Thaaif was most, especially at the part when the leaders insulted me in such a way. That pain was very deep in the heart, which shows that there's a physical pain and there's also an internal pain, that when one is disgraced and he tolerates. That's why sometimes, one day, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Sahaba, who gave a special charity last night? Who gave a special charity last night? We think charity is only give monetarily. That one to give is easy. Allah give us tawfiq to give. Sometimes it's also hard, because when we want to give that one, shaitan, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, shaitan bites upon his hand with 70 jaws. So to give is also hard, but that one is easier. This day, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who gave such a special charity last night? And then Allah's Nabi said to this Sahabi, it was you. And you know what he gave? He was crying in tahajjud. He says, Allah, everybody is giving. I got nothing to give. He had nothing. He says, Allah, my honor, that whoever insulted me in life, whoever belittled me, whoever mocked me, whoever scoffed at me, whoever looked down upon me, Allah, I forgive him wholeheartedly for you. I give my honor for you. How hard that is, to be insulted. Allah's Nabi in this hadith, he says that was the hardest. حِينَ عَرَضْتُ نَفْسِي. When I offered my service, when you're offering something for humanity, And he was insulted that way. That pain never left his heart. Here, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is making this dua. He's inside this garden. And just then, the angel comes. The angel in charge, Jibreel alayhi salam brought that angel. He says, O Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I am Jibreel, as you know. This is the angel in charge of the mountain ranges surrounding Makkah and Thaaif. Now Thaaif is 60 miles away from Makkah. But Makkah was also in the offer. One command, just permission from you. The mountains surrounding these two major cities will be toppled and everyone in there will be crushed. Now imagine, put yourself in the same situation. Someone insulted you, someone hurt your relative, someone hurt your son, someone did something very saddening. How would you feel towards that person? If you were given an offer to terminate him, what would our reaction be? Look at the beloved of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, Allah, give them hidayat. Don't destroy them. And if hidayat is not decreed for them, now imagine this, someone hurts you and you see his son and you show him kindness, and you see his son and you want to help him, and you see his son and solely, wholeheartedly you want to uplift him. What a heart must that be? And this was Rasulullah's repeated condition in Makkah also. The elders tortured him, hurt him, but their sons, Allah's Nabi, welcomed them. What an amazing heart. He says, Allah, give their bachcho hidayat. Give their children hidayat. Give their offspring hidayat. And how Allah readily answered that dua. This is why I said I want you to hear this. Then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was sitting in the garden. As he was sitting, contemplating, Addas was a foreigner from Iraq. His specific town was Ninawa. The famous Imam Nawawi comes from that town. He writes an amazing kitab that we should all read, Riyadus Salihin. We should read this book of hadith. Like we should read the Fada'ilul A'mal. This hadith, you'll find this incident, the first incident in the book. And you'll find Rasulullah's dua there. But Riyadus Salihin, and amazing. It means gardens of paradise, gardens of the righteous. So Rasulullah ﷺ is in this, and Addas comes to him. And he presents some grapes. So Allah's Nabi ﷺ took Allah's name, Bismillah, and ate the grapes. And he spoke to Addas so politely. And he says, where are you from? Addas was intrigued that, you said something. I've never heard anybody in Makkah say Bismillah. So Allah's Nabi asked him, where are you from? He says, I'm from Ninawa. So Allah's Nabi says, my brother is from there. So Addas says, but you know what? Really, you from Makkah, you from the Quraysh, you from Banu Hashim, such a prominent family, and you say, your brother's from my town. It doesn't make sense to me. Allah's Nabi says, Hazrat Yunus? He says, yeah, the Prophet of Allah, Yunus. He's from there. He is my brother. He is from your town. So Addas was so happy. What we learn from here, Rasulullah ﷺ created a link with people. He created a link with people. So even that man filling petrol for you, you can create a link. You know how? You can tell him, brother, our mother and father are the same. He says, how? Kulo. Now they'll say, no, what you mean? Say, no man, we are the same. See, if you cut here and you cut here, it's blood. That's why I love you. And that's why I don't want you to suffer in the afterlife. And he's listening to you attentively because you're speaking to him from your heart. And even better, if you spoke to him in Venda in your town, or you speak to him in Zulu and he's a Zulu, you know how happy he'll be. If you speak to a man in English, you speak to him, you speak to his intellect. But you speak in his language. You speak in his language. You're speaking to his heart. That's why the lady, the helper in my house, I plead with her. I say, Ma, I want you to talk to my children only in Zulu. She say, why? English. Please, Ma. Really, I need this favor from you. Because I want them, even more than any other language, is for them to know the vernacular, the local, the indigenous language. Because we are living with people that we have to guide and show them love and be kind to them. Yeah, you should teach your children Venda. Afrikaans and all we want to learn, mashallah, Ukhandet and whatever, mashallah, very good. But are we going to talk to them about Islam? Do that. That should be the intention. What about the local Venda? What about inviting him? That is very, very important. You speak to a man in his language, you're speaking to his heart. In this, Allah's Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam invited him to Islam. He embraced Islam. He became Hazrat Addas radiyallahu anhu. You can name your son Addas. And also something else you have to think about. My brother was thinking about it. The Quran Kareem is not translated in the Venda language. And there must be about 10-15 million Vendans, isn't it? In South Africa, maybe Zulus must be about 30 million. But Vendans, gee, so think about it, brothers. You know the first Quran Kareem translated in English. The first Quran Kareem translated in English was in 1940 to 1950. A man by the name of Muhammad Akoo. My grandfather loved this translation because with the translation, he had a transliteration with it. The Nizam, in Arabic it's Nizam, the Nizam of Hyderabad in India, he was the richest man in the world. And he was a prominent Muslim. He was like the ruler in Hyderabad. And he was close to the Ottoman Khalifa. To such an extent, when the Ottoman Khalifa, the Khilafah was removed. Na'udhu billah, and sadly was ended in the year 1924. Kamal Ataturk was a man who claimed Islam, but he was put there by the British. He was trained by British universities and he was put into a position to do what nobody could do. He hated Islam, he destroyed Islam, and he was made the ruler of Turkey, and he destroyed Islam and he abolished the Khilafah. What happened to the final Abdul Majid, the final Khalifa? He was taken to Paris, he was kept somewhere there, and you know who was helping him? Red Cross. And it was a sad disgrace because he didn't even have a passport, the Khalifa. So this Nizam of Hyderabad heard about it, and then he proposed his son, on behalf of his son, for the daughter of the last Ottoman Khalif. And that was an amazing nikah that took place. That was hopeful that maybe the child from that union, the Nizam of Hyderabad and the Khalifa's daughter, maybe that child will bring alive the Khilafah again. Anyway, what was the intention didn't end up happening because the Khilafah didn't come alive again. But the same Nizam, he then, one amazing khidmah that he did, because afterwards through the British he lost most of what he had. But he was so prominent and so well to do, like Rolls Royce, he bought for all his servants to drive Rolls Royce. Rolls Royce lost its value through him because they didn't know how to speak properly and respectfully, so he put them in their place. He bought Rolls Royce for all his servants. That was the time in history where Rolls Royce lost its value because even the servants are driving Rolls Royce. He was a really prominent man. He requested Muhammad Akoo, come to India. He gave him a nice place to stay. He says, my funding, you translate the Quran. First translation of the Quran in English. Hazrat, we must make fikr, Vendan language doesn't have a translation of the Quran Kareem. Look who, suitable person, somebody whose heart, this, that, Allah Ta'ala, and there's good people here who's prepared to help also, alhamdulillah, because we have to do something for our akhirah, Muhammad Qasim too is worried about his akhirah like me. We are in same class, we both are worried about our akhirah. We need something that when we go by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's carrying on here. Not just ibadat. My respected father and grandfather and beloveds, read how much Quran? Very good, read. But the day we go, the book of deeds close. What can we do that after we gone, that book of deeds are still opened? And amazingly, interestingly mentioned in the hadith is the Quran Sharif made available to people. Allah give us tawfiq. We were discussing Thaaif, right? Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam leaves that garden and he's returning to Makkah. As he's returning to Makkah, he stops in a valley. And this is the ayah. So I think I must stop. How many minutes more? So then we can carry on with the discussion at night.
Going to Makkah, complete.
Just how many? 4-5 minutes? Is okay. Okay. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes to Makkah. So 2 events I want to mention to you as he's going to Makkah. One is he stopped for salah, and this is the ayah we're going to be reading tonight. He was reading tahajjud prayer, and as he was reading Quran, Allah mentions to him, وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ نَفَرًا مِّنَ الْجِنِّ. Allah says, we sent towards you a jamaat of jinn. We angled in your direction. وَإِذْ صَرَفْنَا إِلَيْكَ. Allah inspired the jinn to go hear our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Allah was teaching a lesson. That the people don't want hidayat, Allah will bring the foreigner, Hazrat Addas. The local Arabs didn't want hidayat there, Thaaif, they hurt our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Allah brought Addas, he embraced Islam. Allah is showing Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, oh my Nabi, Allah is independent. Tell the world, we don't want, keep on walking. Allah is bringing better people. This is in the Quran explicitly. Here in this case, the people of Thaaif don't want. Allah brought jinnat. And read the translation of this. It's the last 2 pages of this chapter, and it's easy for you to find. It's the 26th juz, Surah 46. Read the last 2 pages in the translation. You will enjoy tonight's Taraweeh. Allah brought the jinn. يَسْتَمِعُونَ الْقُرْآنِ. They were listening attentively to the Quran Kareem. When they came, they're calling each other, come, come. فَلَمَّا حَضَرُوهُ قَالُوا أَنصِتُوا. They're telling each other, quiet, quiet, quiet. That's what we have to teach our children. When Quran Sharif plays, not a word. We have to teach them from young. Respect for Allah's kalam. When they finished, فَلَمَّا قُضِيَ. They went to their people. وَاللَّوْ إِلَىٰ قَوْمِهِمْ مُنذِرِينَ. They went to their people and they started inviting their people to Allah. This was really amazing in this Jamaat of Jinnat. This is no fairy tale. This is true. That Jamaat of 9 jinn heard Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's tilawah of the Quran Kareem, and they went to do dawah to all their non-Muslim jinn friends. That was the first group. Actually, their names are also mentioned in the books of history. And they went to do dawah. And so many of the jinns embraced Islam. That's why I tell you something amazing about the Quran. When the Quran speaks of da'wah, I'm not going to translate all the verses because I'm finishing off. But I want you to see the translation. What da'wah the jinn gave is mentioned also in the verse of the Quran. What's amazing, I want you to see. When the Quran Kareem speaks of salah, it's mentioned, salah. But that pious Buzrug who worshipped Allah for 60 years in the monastery is true. But his story is not in the Quran. That pious Buzrug who did so much of ibadah for 100 years is true. It happened in the past, but it's not in the Quran. How special is da'wah? Because you heard the ayah 2 days ago in Surah Mu'min, and I mentioned it in the Musalla in the area after Asr. Allah mentions His da'wah for 3 pages. Here, 1 whole page, Allah is telling us. Allah didn't just say, oh, the jinn gave da'wah, finish. No. When it comes to da'wat, the Quran details. It's clear cut. Take it from me, brothers. And if you don't want to understand, I will explain it to you later on, even I'll show it to you. But I want you to see the translation. Quran touches the topic of da'wat, and Quran details da'wah. Inviting to Allah, inviting to Islam. Allah loves it. That was one incident I wanted to tell you. And as we land now, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam finally arrives in Makkah. He couldn't enter Makkah. Do you know why? Because if you were a Muslim, you needed visa in Makkah. You needed protection. You couldn't just enter. The elite of Makkah, the Quraysh, could give visa. Anybody. And actually what I'm mentioning in the form of visa for our understanding, the Quraysh could give protection. Jiwar. If any Qurashi gave someone protection, nobody could touch that person. But the man giving protection had to be from the Quraysh and had to be a non-Muslim. That was the conditions. So Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam comes from the most prominent family. That's one condition. The second condition is not there. He's not a non-Muslim. So he needs protection. You can't enter Makkah. Otherwise, they made it illegal to enter Makkah protected. Otherwise, it's legal for everyone to attack you, to torture you, to beat you up. That was the wisdom behind Abu Talib. He was from the prominent families and he wasn't a Muslim. That's why no one could just touch Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam when Abu Talib had given him protection. Now, Abu Talib passed away. Who was the second most senior of the Quraysh and of the Banu Hashim? Was Abu Lahab. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam writes a letter to his uncle. Uncle, would you give me protection? He says, never. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wrote to quite a few other prominent leaders. Would you give me protection? No. There's one man whose name is even in the Bukhari Sharif. Allah's Nabi writes to Mut'im. Remember his name. Mut'im bin Adi. Would you offer me your protection? He responded, of course, just wait for me. He gathered his sons. He comes. He welcomes Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Muhammad, it's an honor for me to give you protection. And he escorts Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in. He said, I'm not just taking you to your house. I know you have to make tawaf first before you go home. This is Makkah. He takes Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for tawaf. In the tawaf, Abu Jahl, who's the other leader of the Banu Makhzoom, he says, Oh Mut'im, have you embraced Islam? He says, no. I have given him protection. He says, we respect. Because if he had embraced Islam, that right was forfeited. That was the challenge. It's not just easy to embrace Islam. It has its tests. Especially in the Meccan stage. That's why the Muslims who embraced Islam in Makkah were the most strong in deen. Because there were no hypocrites in Makkah. Hypocrites only come when there's a gravy train. Then you get hypocrites. When there's difficulties, nobody wants to take a chance. So like in Meccan stage, you won't find any munafiq. I'm going to carry on from this discussion tonight, but I want you to think, Mut'im was not a Muslim. And I'll finish off with this notion. There's many good non-Muslims out there in the world. ऐसे गैर मुस्लिमों में अच्छे अच्छे लोग भी हैं. इनके लिए भी हिदायत के फिक्र करना, मेहनत करना, दुआ देना, make dua for them. They're good people. In our business, in our interaction, if you have a prominent man who deals with you, you buy from him. I'll never forget, Allah reward my father, you know. He was with my grandfather, my nana, and they were buying one property from a Jewish company. So they had their representative. And in the discussion, my father asked my grandfather, the dad, you gave him a Quran, you know, and he's asking this Jewish, I don't know if my brother was inspired from my father or my father was inspired from my brother, but this was my brother's way and my father also. He does that. But I think my brother was something else in it, you know, from his childhood. But I should tell you quickly what happened in the discussion. So he says, sir, have you heard of Islam? He says, no. You know, I heard of Islam, but I haven't read the Quran. So he says, that really read, because life is so short and I don't want you to say on Judgment Day that we didn't tell you. So my grandfather is looking at my father like this, you know, with big eyes, like, what you doing, man? You know, it's a business transaction. We don't do all these things here. So my father said, Allah bless him, you know, he said, you know, Dad, if we don't tell them, this man here is going to tell Allah on Judgment Day, Allah, Mr. Akoo didn't tell me. Hey, my grandfather got gabrat. He brought one Quran translation and they gifted him. My point here is, invite these people to Islam. Look at Mut'im, what a good man. Tonight I'm going to mention to you how Allah's Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam later on referred to him in life. And we're going to complete the incident of Thaaif. Because isn't Thaaif Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam went to? But did Thaaif become Muslim? No. So generally we stop the story up to here. Tonight we want to complete the story. How they finally came to Islam and what happened thereafter. It's a very interesting event in history. Please come and join us. And tonight is a very big night. It could be Laylatul Qadr. Let's rest nicely in the afternoon and be rejuvenated for the night. Bring some coffees, you know, special coffees and all those things, and we can make ibadah, make dhikr and all of that, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil ummi bi rahmatika ya arhamar rahimin.